I walked through my front door, expecting the familiar scent of lavender from the potpourri I'd left on the hallway table. Instead, I was hit with patchouli incense so thick I could barely breathe. And voices, lots of voices. I'd only been gone a week, 7 days visiting my sister in Tampa. My daughter Jessica had offered to house sit, said she'd water my plants and collect the mail. It was supposed to be simple, a favor between mother and daughter. But as I stood in my entryway with my suitcase still in hand, I knew immediately that something was very, very wrong. Through the archway to my living room, I could see a woman I'd never met before sitting cross-legged on my Persian rug, the one Arthur and I had bought on our 20th anniversary trip to Istanbul. She had her eyes closed, humming, completely oblivious to my presence. Behind her, another stranger was adjusting what looked like a professional ring light. My living room, the room where I'd raised my children, where we'd celebrated 42 Christmases, where I'd sat alone after Arthur's funeral 5 years ago, trying to figure out how to be a widow at 63. That room was now full of strangers. I set my suitcase down carefully, my accountant's mind already cataloging details. Navy blue yoga mat, not mine. Phone tripod by the fireplace, definitely not mine. Essential oil diffuser on my grandmother's side table, absolutely not mine. The furniture had been pushed against the walls. My family photos were face down on the bookshelf. The humming woman opened her eyes and smiled at me like we were old friends. "Oh, are you here for the afternoon session?" Jessica said, "We had a full house this weekend, but I thought everyone had already checked in." I'm Amber, by the way, checked in. Like this was a hotel. Like this was my daughter's property to rent out. I felt my jaw tighten the way it used to during tax season when I'd find a client's shoebox of receipts held together with rubber bands and hope. "I'm Margaret Chen," I said, keeping my voice level. "I own this house. Who exactly are you, and why are you in my living room?" Amber's smile faltered. She glanced at the other woman, who was now filming us on her phone. "Oh my God, Jessica didn't tell you? We're here for the wellness and renewal weekend. We paid $500 each. There's, 12 of us staying here? $500, 12 people." I did the math instantly, the way I always did. $6,000. My daughter had collected $6,000 to turn my home into some kind of unauthorized bed and breakfast. I walked past Amber without another word, my sensible travel shoes silent on the hardwood floor I'd refinished 3 years ago. Each room I entered made my blood pressure climb another notch. The dining room, where we'd hosted Thanksgiving for 27 consecutive years now, had a juice bar set up on my table. My Waterford crystal was shoved in a cardboard box in the corner. Someone had put a handwritten menu on my china cabinet. Green Goddess Cleanse, $15. Warrior Energy Shot, $12. Mindful Matcha Latte, $8. They were selling drinks. In my dining room, using my electricity, my water, probably my blender. The kitchen was worse. Every cabinet hung open. My mother's cast iron skillet, the one I'd used to make Sunday pancakes for 40 years, sat crusted with what looked like protein powder. The refrigerator was packed with unfamiliar juice bottles and someone's meal prep containers, all labeled with names I didn't know. My groceries, the ones I'd carefully organized before my trip, were nowhere to be seen. I found my cookware stacked in the basement. Not carefully stored, just stacked. My Le Creuset Dutch oven had a chip on the rim, the set Arthur had given me for our 25th anniversary, the color he'd called the exact shade of your eyes when you're happy. Chipped. I took out my phone and started taking pictures. Every room, every detail. The accountant in me knew that documentation was everything. You can't prove what you can't show. Upstairs was even more violating. The guest bedrooms, the ones I decorated for when my grandchildren visited, each had 2 strangers sleeping in them. I could hear someone showering in the hallway bathroom. Someone else was meditating in what used to be Jessica's childhood room, sitting on a meditation cushion placed directly on top of the carpet stain from when she'd spilled nail polish at age 13. But it was my bedroom that made me stop breathing for a moment. The door was closed. I'd left it open. I always left it open. I turned the handle slowly, half afraid of what I'd find. My sanctuary, the room I'd barely let anyone enter since Arthur died, had been transformed into what looked like a day trading operation. There were 3 monitors set up on my dresser, the one Arthur had built by hand in his workshop. Extension cords snaked across the floor. The bed was unmade, and it clearly wasn't my sheets. My wedding photo was turned face down on the nightstand. In its place sat an empty energy drink can and scattered cryptocurrency trading books. I recognized one of the books. Derek, Jessica's boyfriend, the one who'd lost $40,000 in some crypto scheme last year and had been regrouping ever since. He'd been sleeping in my bed, in the room where Arthur and I had spent 13,000 nights together, where we'd whispered our dreams and fears, where he'd held my hand during his final week when hospice had set up the hospital bed. I took more pictures, close-ups of the monitors, the trading books, the unfamiliar toiletries in my bathroom. I opened my closet and found my clothes shoved to one side, Derek's things taking up the other half. He'd moved in, not house-sitting, moved in. My hands were shaking now, but not from weakness, from rage, from the crystalline clarity that comes when you finally see the truth you'd been too trusting to notice before. I walked back downstairs, past Amber, who was now doing something called a sound bath with 3 other women, past the juice bar, past all of it. I went to my car, got my laptop from my suitcase, and drove to the Starbucks 2 blocks away. For the next 3 hours, I worked the way I used to work during audit season. Methodical, thorough, unemotional. First, I searched social media. It took me less than 5 minutes to find Jessica's Instagram. She'd rebranded herself as Jess Bliss, Wellness, and had over 11,000 followers. Her bio read, "Hosting transformative wellness retreats in an authentic Victorian home." DM for dates. An authentic Victorian home. My home. The one I'd bought with money I'd saved from 42 years of tax returns. I scrolled through her posts. Photos of strangers doing yoga in my living room, posted 3 weeks ago. A video tour of the retreat space, which was clearly my house, posted a month ago. Testimonials from previous guests. This wasn't her first time. I took screenshots of everything. Every post, every comment, every tag. I saved them in a folder labeled Evidence. Then I called my lawyer, Patricia, the one who'd handled Arthur's estate. "Patricia, I need to know about tenant rights, illegal business operations, and fraud. How fast can you see me?" She heard something in my voice. "I have an opening at 4. "Margaret, are you okay?" "I will be," I said, "once I finish what I'm about to start." At 4:15, I sat in Patricia's office, my laptop open, showing her everything. The photos, the Instagram posts, the calendar function on Jessica's website that showed she'd been booking retreats for the past 4 months. Every weekend, I'd been out of town visiting my sister or friends. Patricia leaned back in her chair, her expression grim. "Margaret, what she's doing is illegal on multiple levels. Operating a business without proper licensing, violating zoning laws. Your neighborhood is residential only. If she's collected payment without declaring income, that's tax evasion. And since you didn't consent, this could constitute fraud. What do I do? Legally, you can give her 48 hours notice to vacate. But Margaret, this is your daughter. My daughter who's been running an illegal hotel out of my house. My daughter who charged 12 people $500 each to sleep in my bedrooms. My daughter who let her boyfriend set up shop in the room where my husband died." My voice cracked on the last word. The first emotion I'd let myself show since finding Amber in my living room. Patricia slid a box of tissues across her desk. "I'll draft the eviction notice, but I'd also suggest you document everything yourself. Photos, videos, witness statements, if possible. And Margaret, consider reporting this to the city. They take illegal business operations seriously." I left her office with a plan, not just eviction. That was too simple, too clean. Jessica needed to understand that actions have consequences, real consequences. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back to my house and pretended to be a retreat guest. I'd changed clothes at Target, buying yoga pants and a loose tunic that screamed wellness seeker. I pulled my hair into a messy bun and took off my glasses, relying on contacts I rarely wore. Then I paid the $40 drop-in fee for the sunset meditation and sound healing session listed on Jessica's website. I walked into my own home as a stranger. Jessica was in the kitchen, wearing flowing white linen and explaining the benefits of activated charcoal to two women who were drinking something green. She looked right at me and smiled. "Welcome. First time at one of our retreats?" She didn't recognize me. Her own mother, standing 5 feet away, and she didn't even look closely enough to see me. "First time," I said, keeping my voice slightly higher than normal. "A friend recommended it, said it was very authentic." "Oh, we pride ourselves on authenticity," Jessica said, gesturing around my kitchen like she owned it. "This house has such incredible energy. It's been in my family for generations." A lie. I'd bought this house in 1987 with money I'd saved working overtime during tax season. Jessica was 3 years old. It had been in our family for 38 years, not generations, and I'd made every mortgage payment myself after Arthur's accounting firm had hit hard times. I smiled and nodded and took out my phone, pretending to Instagram the moment. But I was recording every word, every lie. The session was held in my living room, led by Derek, who apparently was now a certified sound healer. He wasn't certified in anything except losing other people's money. But I sat through his 40-minute presentation about chakras and vibration frequencies. I recorded all of it. Afterward, during the integration tea ceremony, which was really just herbal tea served in my good china, I chatted with the other guests. I learned that most had paid $500 for the weekend. Some had paid extra for private sessions with Jessica. One woman had been charged $300 for a personalized wellness plan that was clearly just a template Jessica had found online. I recorded those conversations too. "Witness statements," Patricia had said. I was getting witness statements. At 9 p.m., I slipped out during the evening quiet time and drove back to the hotel where I'd checked in that afternoon. I sat on the generic hotel bed and went through everything I'd gathered. Photos of every room, videos of Jessica lying about the house's history, recordings of financial transactions, screenshots of her website showing 4 months of bookings, a calculation of estimated revenue, 24 weekends, 12 guests each at $500, plus add-on services, over $75,000. $75,000 in unreported income from illegal business operations in my home, using my utilities, my furniture, my family's history as marketing material. I opened my laptop and started typing, not an angry email, an organized, itemized list of violations with supporting evidence attached. 1 copy went to Patricia, 1 to the city's zoning enforcement office, 1 to the county health department, because I was certain Jessica didn't have the proper permits to serve food and beverages to paying customers, and 1, after a moment's hesitation, to the IRS tip line. Arthur used to say I was thorough to a fault. Tonight, I was grateful for that fault. The next morning, I put on my best blazer, the one I used to wear to client meetings when I needed to project authority. I drove to my house at 10 a.m., walked through the front door I'd paid for, and found Jessica leading a morning manifestation circle in my living room. I didn't wait for her to finish. I walked into the center of the circle, into my own living room, and said clearly, "Everyone needs to leave. Now." Jessica's face went white. "Mom? What are you? When did you get back?" "Yesterday. While you were charging Amber and 11 other people to stay in my house without my knowledge or permission." The room went silent. 12 faces turned from Jessica to me and back again. "You need to go," I said to the guests, my voice calm but firm. "This is my private residence. My daughter has been operating an illegal business here. You have 30 minutes to gather your belongings and leave the property." "Mom, wait, let me explain." 30 minutes. I repeated, looking at the guests, not at Jessica. After that, I'm calling the police to report trespassing. They left. All of them. Some angry at Jessica, some just confused. All of them gone within 25 minutes. I stood at the door and watched each one leave, making note of their license plates just in case Patricia needed more evidence. When the last car pulled away, I turned to face Jessica and Derek, who'd emerged from my bedroom looking like he'd just woken up. "You used my house to run a business," I said. "You've been doing it for months. You charged people money to sleep in my bedrooms, to use my furniture, to drink tea from my china. You let your boyfriend move into the room where your father died. You lied on social media, claiming this house was yours. You collected at least $75,000 in cash without declaring it as income." "Mom, it's not like that. I have evidence, Jessica. Photos, videos, financial records, witness statements. I have screenshots of every Instagram post. I attended your session last night and recorded you lying about this house's history. I have it all documented." Derek stepped forward, trying for a smile. "Mrs. Chen, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, cutting him off with the ice-cold tone I used to use on clients who tried to lie on their tax returns, "was mine. I misunderstood who my daughter had become." I pulled out the envelope Patricia had prepared. "This is a 48-hour eviction notice. You have 2 days to remove all of your belongings and return my house keys. After that, the locks will be changed, and anything remaining will be considered abandoned property." Jessica's face crumpled. "You can't do this. I'm your daughter. I needed the money." "You needed the money, so you committed fraud. You needed the money, so you violated zoning laws. You needed the money, so you lied to customers about owning a property that belongs to me. Those were your choices. Dad would never." "Don't." The word came out sharp enough to make them both flinch. "Don't you dare tell me what your father would or wouldn't do. Your father spent 30 years building a legitimate accounting business. He paid his taxes. He followed the law. He would be horrified by what you've done." I set the envelope on the juice bar, on my own dining room table. 48 hours. I've already reported the business violations to the city and the unreported income to the IRS. My lawyer says I could also press charges for fraud, but I'm trying to give you a chance to make this right. "You reported me to the IRS? Your own daughter?" "I reported illegal activity that happened to be committed by someone I'm related to. There's a difference." I walked to the door, then turned back. "And Jessica? I want you to understand something. This isn't about the money, although you will be paying me back every cent you made using my property. This is about trust, about boundaries, about respect. You didn't just break the law. You broke into my life, my memories, my home, and you treated it all like it was yours to exploit." "Mom, please." 48 hours, I repeated. "After that, you're trespassing." I left before she could see me cry. I made it to my car, drove 3 blocks to the park where Arthur and I used to take evening walks, and let myself fall apart for exactly 10 minutes. I set a timer on my phone, because even grief needs boundaries. When the timer went off, I dried my eyes, reapplied my lipstick, and drove to Home Depot to price new locks. The next 48 hours were busy. I hired a cleaning service for after they left. I called an appraiser to assess the damage to my Le Creuset. I met with Patricia twice more to go over next steps. I changed my utilities into my name only, discovering that Jessica had somehow gotten them switched to hers 3 months ago. Another piece of evidence, another screenshot for the file. On the morning of the 48th hour, I arrived at 9 a.m. with a locksmith. Jessica's car was already gone, Derek's too. I let myself in with my key, half expecting them to have trashed the place in retaliation. But they'd cleaned. Not perfectly, but they'd tried. The furniture was back in place. My photos were standing upright again. There was an envelope on the kitchen counter with my name on it. Inside was a check for $6,000, the amount from this weekend's retreat, and a note in Jessica's handwriting. "I'm sorry. I know this doesn't fix it. I know I broke your trust. I don't know how to make it right, but I want to try. I'm seeing a financial counselor. Derek and I broke up. I canceled my Instagram. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I stood in my kitchen holding the note and felt nothing at first. Then something small and hard in my chest started to soften, just slightly. Not forgiveness yet. Maybe not forgiveness for a long time, but the tiniest possibility of eventual understanding. I folded the note and put it in my purse. I let the locksmith change every lock. I supervised the cleaning service as they deep cleaned every room, erasing the evidence of strangers in my space. I personally hand-washed my mother's cast-iron skillet until it gleamed. That evening, I sat on my front porch with a cup of tea, the kind I actually liked, not some wellness blend that cost $12. My phone rang. Patricia, the city fined her $3,000 for the zoning violations, she said. And Margaret, I got a call from an IRS investigator. They're very interested in the documentation you provided. Good, I said, and meant it. There's something else. One of the women from the retreat, Amber, she contacted me. She wants to join a class action lawsuit against Jessica for misrepresentation. Apparently, several others do too. I sipped my tea and watched the sunset paint my quiet residential street in shades of amber and rose. The street I'd chosen specifically because it was zoned residential, because it was peaceful, because it was home. Tell them I'll cooperate with any investigation, I said. I have plenty of documentation. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about trust and boundaries and the strange arithmetic of family love. How you can raise someone for 35 years, sacrifice your own dreams to support theirs, and still end up with them, treating your home like a business opportunity. But I also thought about that note in my purse, about the check that would barely cover the damages but showed at least an attempt at accountability, about the fact that she'd cleaned before she left. It wasn't enough. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But I'd spent 42 years doing taxes. I knew about slow progress, about payment plans, about the long work of balancing accounts that had gotten out of alignment. I knew that some debts took years to pay off, and some relationships took even longer to rebuild. I finished my tea and went inside, locking my new locks behind me. My house smelled like my lavender potpourri again. My furniture was where it belonged. My mother's skillet hung in its proper place. I walked through each room, touching the things that were mine, that I'd earned, that no one had the right to use without asking. I stopped in my bedroom doorway and looked at the bed where Arthur and I had spent so many years, where I'd said goodbye to him, where Derek had presumed to sleep without permission. Tomorrow I'd buy new sheets, new pillows. I'd reclaim that room completely. But tonight, I stood at the threshold and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Safe, protected, home. The eviction notice had worked. The documentation had worked. My 42 years of learning to keep meticulous records, to trust numbers over emotions, to build a paper trail, it had all worked. Jessica would face consequences. Real ones, legal ones. The kind that teach lessons better than any lecture I could have given. And I would heal. Slowly, methodically, the way I did everything else. I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, in the guest room for tonight because I wasn't quite ready for my bedroom yet. As I drifted off to sleep, I found myself doing something unexpected. I forgave myself. For trusting too easily, for not asking more questions, for not seeing what Jessica had become until strangers were sleeping in my house. The city would handle their investigation. The IRS would handle theirs. Patricia would handle the legal aftermath. And I would handle my own healing, in my own time, in my own home. The home I'd bought, the home I'd earned, the home that was finally and completely mine again.